Good evening, campers, it's me, Q. Today we are going to discuss the 1884 science fiction novel, Flatland, by Edwin A. Abbott. Originally published under the pseudonym A Square, Flatland tells the story of A Square, who lives in a wholly two-dimensional world called Flatland. And A Square, who is a square, is in contact with Lord Sphere, who is in the world Space Land, which is a three-dimensional world, which is ours. And A Square basically tells us how a two-dimensional world works while theorizing what a higher dimensional world would be. Because to A Square, he can feel the effects of the third dimension, he just can't perceive it. Unlike Lord Sphere, the reader understands that we can feel the effects of a higher dimension, we just can't perceive it. We can understand the fourth dimension. We can feel the effects of time. We just can't see it. Unless you're a Tralfamadorian watching this video, I do apologise. You're very different. A Square talks about how the society of Flatland works, how you understand people's nobility and social class by rubbing up against them and seeing how many sides that they have. While it's quite funny thinking of an entire civilization that has to feel each other up to understand what on earth they're speaking to, it's because, and littered throughout this book, there are mathematics, there are diagrams that explain that, well, because they don't have any... What am I doing? How do I even articulate this? Because there's no height, there's no third dimension, A Square tells us that a pentagon and a triangle would look the exact same, and therefore the need to basically grope each other is really important in a society. I will say, if you understand like the theoretical mathematics of this, then you are the real square. Let's not talk about A Square. Abbott himself is an interesting character. He was actually one of the youngest and most acclaimed head teachers at the time. It's really weird to think about the Victorian era. They did things very different to us, didn't they? Upon leaving that career, devoted himself to scholarly works, and out of his array of works, Flatland really stands out in regards to its whimsy and its satirical nature. And while its whimsy is in the exploration of a 2D world and how on earth could a 3D world possibly be imagined, the satirical side of this can feel a little bit aged and dated. I have always personally felt that satire has a cut-off point, and 140 years on from the publication of Flatland, things are going to feel a little bit dry. However, in saying that, discussion about society being split up in different sections of different hierarchies, this topic isn't original. The only originality put onto it is that everything's flat. But one criticism that I could see people making within the contemporary age is Abbott's discussion of women, which is basically that they're there to rear the children and that the hierarchical problems within society are just of the men. But this is over 100 years old and still somewhat feels a little bit fresh in its approach. Although the prose, the vocabulary and some of the viewpoints definitely entrench it within the Victorian age. Quirky and has a almost twee charm to it that I kind of appreciate. Abbott's exploration within the dimensional plane and how he's able to articulate the world building and the construct of the Flatland is done well. I'm not saying that this is pared down by any means, but I think you can grasp what is being discussed. There were times, especially within the earlier sections of the books, where I did have to reread paragraphs a few times just to understand how the world was being articulated. But I think if you read hard science fiction, I think you'll be okay with this. But if you wanted a stepping stone to get into hard sci-fi, I would probably go with this. I'd give it a 4 out of 10, which is how many dimensional points we have on the 3D plane. And I think there's something poetic about that.